Please welcome Ms. Ericka Hayes.
Thank you, Lamont. I don't think I'm going to stay up on the stage. I'm going to go by my notes first, and then I'll come down. Can you give me the presentation, please? Thank you. So today we're going to talk about sharpening your financial focus. I'm going to talk a little bit about 7 ways to make your money make sense. So today's objectives, the first objective is to discuss why your money doesn't make sense, if in fact it doesn't. Secondly, we'll examine 7 factors of financial literacy. And third, we're going to review what you need to do going forward to make sure your money always makes sense. Now, why doesn't your money make sense? So I can get you to give me some answers for that, but based on my experience and people always want to talk to me about money, what I see most of the time is that people don't make smart money choices. Most people put wants before needs. They see something shiny or pretty or something that looks like it's going to look good, but it's not necessarily one of their responsibilities. So they take care of those things first before they take care of their bills. So that includes not paying bills on time, spending without a plan, putting wants over needs, not respecting credit rules, and living outside of your means. I know some people who actually live on credit cards all the time. That's probably why they struggle most of the time, because if you live on money that you don't have, eventually you're going to have to pay it back. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is the money script or the money story that's playing in your head. Now, this is what, in my research I found, determines what most people are doing with their money. Now, for me, my particular money script is responsibility equals happiness and freedom. That story plays in my head because when I was growing up, I lived in a house full of people who were not especially financially literate. They didn't pay a lot of bills, so sometimes there were lights and sometimes there weren't, and sometimes there was a phone and sometimes it wasn't. So as a child, it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, but either a person follows that same path or they find a different way. And when I was recently talking at an elementary school, one of the teachers asked me to go in front of the students and to tell them, what did I want to be when I grew up? And I said, well, you don't want to tell that story. And she said, well, why not? Well, I said, because when I was growing up, I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. I didn't have a list of things I wanted to do. I wanted to move. That's all I ever wanted to do, move. Because there was just so much chaos and so much craziness and so many things going on in my house. I just didn't want that life. But there are other people in my family who made the choice, who didn't make that same choice. And so now they struggle with things financially because they took on those same habits and they didn't try to learn a different way. So for a lot of people, what I find is either you use the example that you got when you were growing up and you followed that same path. So if you watched people struggle, then you struggle. And to me, that's learning how to survive instead of learning how to live. Or you try to find a different way. And it's difficult sometimes to find a different way if you don't have an example for that. If you don't have anybody around you who knows how to manage money, if you don't have anybody around you who has good credit, or if you spend your time around people who say, oh, buy that purse, you need it. Or you need a better car. Just go, you can get credit, you can purchase it. So I think for most people, if once you understand what your money story is, once you understand what's playing in your head that's making you make your decisions about your money, that will help you understand why you do what you do. And it doesn't matter if you're in business or if you have a job. When I was doing the research and I looked at the dynamics of the people who were going to be here, I saw that only a portion of the people were going to be business owners, but a lot of people were going to be just individuals with jobs. And so what I realized is that even if you're in business, if you have bad money habits, those habits are pervasive. They go from your business, they go from your personal, to your business. You can't be great with money in your business, but then not pay your bills at home. That just kind of doesn't go together. So if you can grasp the first concept and make some decisions about why you're doing what you're doing, if you're doing something that's destructive for you, then I would ask that for the next items that we go over, just take a look at the things that we're going to talk about. I don't like telling adults what to do because I know they don't like to be told what to do. But what I'm going to try to achieve today is to show you a different way to look at some of the things that affect your money. And if you can see them a different way, then maybe you can approach them a different way. Okay? Give me the slides back. So you get to choose what your money story is going forward. So you can start today and you can change it if it's not working for you. Okay, so first we're going to talk a little bit about how money is made or acquired. And you can start a business, you can work several jobs. I spoke with a man who was from Ethiopia the other day. He told me that one of the reasons he came to America is because he has the opportunity to make more money, and that in different countries, they have limits on the time that they can work. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that they have some laws where people can only work 8 hours a day. They can't work anymore. And so that's why a lot of people come here, because we have opportunities to make as much money as we want if we choose to make the effort. You can also invest in businesses or get money-generating assets. You can create things, you can design things. And then one of the actual topics that I saw that I thought was interesting was you can spend other people's money. Now, I know a lot of people who do that. Some people get married to be able to spend money. Some people just borrow other people's money. So that's not necessarily a revenue-generating way, but it's still a way to get some money. So I want to do an exercise that one of my favorite speakers did for us. Her name is Dr. Siv. She's a professor in Nashville. Tell me, or just give me a number, how many streams of income do you think a megachurch has, or that megachurches have? Okay. What else? Anybody else? 10? I can't hear you. The size of the congregation? Okay. I found 19. Okay? And can you give me the slides back? I'm not sure that I found all of them, but I did a little research. So these are the streams of income that I found that mega churches have. Now, to make sure I don't offend anybody, can you tell me what churches sell? Hope. Hope. Now, I looked over the list last night, and most of you sell tangible products or services, right? You don't sell hope. Hope is not tangible, right? And they have 19 streams of income to make money. The average megachurch makes $5 million a year right now. So if they have 19 streams of income or 19 possible streams of income, how many sources of income does your business have? And if you only have one and you're under stress, you should know why you're under stress. The only reason people are under extreme stress, and the primary reason that suicides are committed mostly at 9 o'clock on Monday, that's when most of them are committed. It's because of stress. That's what it is. And so if you only have one stream of income, that income stream controls you. But if you have more than one stream of income, it doesn't. So what if you only have one major customer? If you're always worried that that customer is going to pull out or something's going to happen to that customer, you're just always running and always trying to appease that person, even if it's your job, same thing. So if you want to change your dynamics with your income, you have to change the sources of income that you have. You have to increase the sources of income that you have. Now, I asked ODOT if it was okay for me to give out prizes for great answers, not just any answer. So they told me that I could. So can anybody tell me how many sources of income they have? You can't just give me a number, you got to name them. 2? Anybody got more than that? 3? Is that the most? 5? Okay. Can you stand up and tell me what sources of income you have?
We have a personal business.
Okay.
And my husband, me, my personal job. We have a horse farm, so we put on roofing and boarding facility is part of the horse farm. So
Okay. All right. So I would like to make sure that before we leave, if you want to talk to me about adding some sources of income or trying to be a little bit more creative with the sources of income you have, it doesn't really matter what type of business you have. I looked at the list last night and I saw that we have some engineering, construction, energy, environmental, and I think I saw a striping company. Now, one of the things we have at Tennessee Department of Transportation, when we've been going over the contracts here lately, we had a DBE that did striping, but we don't anymore. And so that's an opportunity for someone. And even though we don't have a company who can do DBE striping, well, we don't have one that's a DBE to do striping. What we don't have and what we haven't been able to find is somebody to come in and train someone to do DBE striping. And a lot of businesses, when they don't look at what other opportunities are available for them in business. One medical company that I read about, they do small surgeries at little hospitals or little doctor's offices. Sometimes they do surgeries there. And so it costs them a lot of money to do those there. So another company who knew they were kind of trying to help them bring in equipment, and they had to clean it and take it somewhere and sterilize it and do those kinds of things, they came up with a solution where now they have disposable surgery equipment. They use it one time, they pack it up, they throw it away. So that company, instead of trying to figure out a way to make things, to give them a cheaper way to sterilize their equipment, they just gave them something disposable. Now they do that for doctors' offices all over. And for you, instead of always trying to figure out a way to do the exact same thing that the businesses that you're working with are doing, and instead of always looking at businesses that are similar to yours as competitors, you need to sit down with some of those business owners and determine what are their pain points, what do they need, what are you complaining about, and what are they complaining about. You may be able to make money business to business just by solving problems for some of the people that you work around and people who are in your industry or a complementary industry. So those are ways that you can actually create more streams of income for your business instead of just trying to fight with everybody else for the exact same contracts. Okay? Can I have slides back, please? Okay. So for number 3, we need to learn how to read and understand financial statements. Now, I wanted to ask how many of you know how to read financial statements. So what I'd really like to know is how many of you get financial statements every month from an accountant, a bookkeeper, a CPA, somebody like that? Raise your hand for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so how many of you just have somebody file something at the end of the year and you don't know what your profit or loss is until you file your taxes? 1? Okay. So one of the problems that the businesses that I've worked with have had is that they don't know how to read financial statements. And if you don't know how to read financial statements, then you don't know where you are in your business. And if you don't know where you are, then how can you become successful if you don't have any idea about your business? So my other question was about your personal financials. Now, does everyone in the, would just tell me how many people in here already know what their net worth is, your personal net worth, not your business? So if your house burned up today, would you be able to give the insurance adjuster all the information so you can list everything that's in your house and everything that they need to replace? No, can't do that? Okay, but you know everything that's in your house, right? You should know? Okay, so what you need to do when you get home is get a notebook and walk from room to room and figure out what's in there. Because you could have purchased things and you'll forget. With the stress of a fire or a storm or something like that, you're gonna forget things. And if you would list those things out and figure out what the replacement value is, because that's normally what insurance covers, then you would be able to at least know what you're worth. Because if you get the sum total of everything you own and you subtract all the people that you owe, that's what you're worth. I met one lady, not college educated, first woman I ever met. She is a millionaire with her assets. She and her husband just worked. That's all they did. They worked. They took care of their children and they worked. And so now she's 60. She's 60. And I think he passed away maybe about 10 years ago. But with her, I think the only thing she pays for are utilities, phone bill, taxes. That's it. House is paid for, vehicles are paid for, no credit cards, no debts. She owns the house. Actually, she owns two houses. There's one that's rented. She owns the land that's here, the land that's over here, the land across the street, the land down the street. Because as it became available, they just purchased it all, one lot at a time, and it's all paid for. So a lot of people think, well, you just have to keep making a lot of money to be rich. Not necessarily. You just need to make good business decisions. Okay? Can I have slides back? Okay, so one of your tasks for today is to go home and figure out what you're actually worth. And if you aren't getting balance sheets, income statements, and statements of cash flow for your business, then that is something that you need to do. The first client that I had out of college, the guys told me, because I was doing their payroll, it was a staffing company for a construction firm. And I did a lot of their payroll, but I also did financial statements for them. And for a while, especially because we were all around the same age, about 25, they complained all the time. Oh, Ms. Hayes, you charge us too much. Oh, Ms. Hayes, you charge us too much. But what ended up happening is they called me. I get their financial statements. I get their bank statements every month. And I was looking at financial statements, and in the span of maybe 3 or 4 months, I saw that 2 vendors overcharged them. One charged them twice, $793 for car repairs. They never look at it. They didn't see it. If you wait more than 120 days, I think the bank won't give you your money back. Somebody else overcharged them for something. I called them about that. But then one of their employees was forging checks. And I know their signatures. So when I looked at the check, because I was putting the checks in the computer, I saw that the check was a number that was way higher than the checks that we were using. And the signature was wrong. So instead of calling them, I just went down to the office. And they were looking at me and they were like, why are you here? It's like, because we got a problem. And so we went into the person's office and we pulled the checks and we saw that they were going underneath the bottom of the stack of checks and writing checks to somebody. Now, they weren't writing checks to themselves. I think they were making up vendors and doing things like that. But if you have somebody who's paying attention for you, then you won't have to find out $20,000 or $50,000 later that somebody's been embezzling money from you. One of the other ways that you find out is if you're getting financial statements at least once a month or once a quarter, you'll be able to see if your office supplies are too high, if some of your expenses in the office are too high. you'll be able to see if there's rent that's been paid that wasn't supposed to be. If somebody just peruses that for you, like I said, even if it's once every 90 days, they can save you more money than you're actually going to pay them. Okay? So I want you to think about that a little bit, because most business owners tell me, well, we can't afford it. And from my perspective, especially because most of the time people don't call me until something's wrong. That's when they call me, but it's way too late after the fact. I can't do anything about what somebody's already done. So that should be a priority for you. Now, the next thing I think you should need to think about is aligning your income with your goals. Now, if one more person comes up to me and tells me they want $1 million, I'm probably gonna choke myself. Because that's the magic number for everybody. I don't know why everybody thinks they want $1 million. But most people aren't doing enough to make $1 million. If all it is a dream and you make $8 an hour and you spend all of that, you're never gonna get it. It's literally impossible. It's not gonna happen. So you need to list your business and personal goals, and they need to be kind of lined up. They need to kind of work together. Calculate how much money you need to achieve these goals. Review your current business or personal income and determine if your goals can be achieved with your current income. And then you need to align the two. So for somebody who actually does want to have $1 million in the bank, then you would have to be, say for instance, you wanted it in 10 years. Then you would have to be netting, after all your expenses and all your money comes in, $100,000 a year. Now, if you're not making $100,000 a year, then you can't get that. Unless you find a way to invest it or make it or more sources of income than what you actually have. And you have to stop thinking that all the money that you make has to be made with your hands. You can't do it. Not by yourself. You can't. The richest people in the world make money off of other people. Trust me, they do. And you also need to understand the purposes of taxes, business, credit, insurance, and the law. Most of the people I've seen who file bankruptcy is because of these reasons. And you can file bankruptcy for taxes. It really can't save you, but for all these other things, you probably can file bankruptcy. But most of the businesses that I see that file bankruptcy is because they're in business to be in business. They're not in business to make money. They like people. You know, we have a DBE in Tennessee. She has a bilingual company, and so she translates for people, but she doesn't want to charge them. She's like, well, they don't have any money. I said, and neither do you. So she kept listening, and we kept telling her, and it's like a group of us. And like I told you, I know adults don't like to be told what to do, so we try not to. But we were like, please, you have to charge something. So I think they had a meeting with her last week, and it finally clicked for her. She said, you know, I'm not going to make any money if I don't charge these people. We were like, really? That's great. So, but if you're in business and you're bidding on projects and you are always the low bidder, or you're bidding and you forgot something, and you're at a loss every year, then my question is, why are you still in business? What are you doing? Because you can actually make more money on a job and have less stress than running a business and then getting a zero bottom line every year. And then a lot of people, one of the reasons I don't do a lot of taxes, a lot of people don't want to pay any taxes. They want to make money all year, but then they want to have a zero tax liability. That kind of doesn't go together. And if you're not in business to make a profit, then why would you be in business unless it's a nonprofit? There's no reason for that. And then there's something that backfires on you if you don't actually have a profit. If you don't have a profit in your business, then in maybe 3 or 4 years, you're probably going to want to buy a car. How are you going to buy it? When you give them they're going to ask you for your tax returns. They said, well, this business isn't making any money. We can't give you a car based on this. Those are the calls I normally get when people are stuck in something like that. Or I can't buy a house because I can't qualify, because I don't have any income, because I don't want to take a paycheck, because I don't want to pay taxes. It doesn't work together. Now, one of the things that I learned about taxes, I've been dealing with taxes, I think, probably since I was in high school. It's been more than 20 years. But I wasn't able to really have respect for the tax system that we have in this country until I left the country. So we went on a trip to Jamaica, I don't know, it was more than 10 years ago. And what I found interesting was that when we first got there and we landed, we walked into the airport and there was a guy standing there with a stamp. That's it. No computer, no terminals, no scanners like all the stuff we have. He just had a stamp. No regulation at all. So if he didn't like you, you couldn't get in. Had to go get back on the plane. That's it. I was like, really? It's like the people in America would love this. So we were able to get past that guy, but then we went and got on this bus. And it was supposed to take us 2 hours to get to Ocho Rios. It took 4. Found out why the trip was so cheap. It was rainy season. Yeah, who knew? But we were on this road, and there is one road. Doesn't look like ODOT or TDOT. Doesn't look like all the stuff we do. There's one road. There is no way around that. And part of the road was washed out because of all the rain. So there were people with buckets trying to get the water out of the way so our bus could go by. And I was like, really? This is what they do? And then there were people living in huts, grass huts. No, I didn't see a mall. There was no grocery store. There was no running water. Oh, until we got to the resort. But for the regular people in the houses that I saw, none of those things. You know, how we can ride by and see a grocery store, we can go out of town and stop at a Walmart. No, none of that. And so when we got to the resort, I ended up talking to a lady. She was doing the manicures, pedicures, massages, things like that. So I asked her, I said, well, how much money do you make? She said, about $100 a week. It's like to do massages? She said, yeah. I said, if you lived in the United States, you could probably make that in like an hour or two, depending on where you work. And she told me, I can't come to the United States. So why? She said, we can't just leave. Really? Why? That's just the way it is. And I didn't know until that time that not all countries are free. So only 48% of the countries in this world are free. It's 47. So there are 90 countries that are free, 58 countries that are partially free, and 45 countries that are not free at all. So they can't just come and go and do as they please like we do. They can't vote. They don't have the rights that we have. I used to wonder why when we were watching television, you could see people on these boats and they would lay on a boat for like 3 days trying to get to America. I was like, why would they do that? I understand now. So even though I'm not fond of all the business taxes and the regulation, and they came up with something else in Tennessee that we have to pay, we have a professional privilege tax now that we have to pay. So because we have a license, got to pay. But we can't. But we don't have a state tax. So. And they know that if you've gone through all these trials to be a doctor or an attorney or CPA or something, you're not going to give up your license for $400 a year. So you just got to pay it. But even though I'm not fond of all these different regulations, I understand that in order for us to live in the pay-as-you-go society that we live in, we have to pay taxes. Because if we didn't pay taxes, then there would be no schools, there would be no supportive services, there would be no grocery stores, there would be no USDA. We wouldn't be able to go in the house and take a shower, turn on the water, brush your teeth. You know, all the things that we enjoy in this country, I think because we were born into this country and we think this is normal, and you've probably never been somewhere where this doesn't exist, you don't know that it costs money to pave roads from California to Virginia. It costs money to do that. And the money that we pay in pays for those things. Well, some of the money. So there was some more, research I did last week. I don't want to tell y'all about that, but a lot of the money that we use is for things that help us. Calling the fire department, calling the police, somebody coming, even with the hospitals and different things like that. There are privileges that we enjoy that our taxes pay for, that until you are able to at least have the perspective and understand what your money is paying for, then you won't want to pay taxes until you understand why it's necessary. Okay? Can I have slides back, please? Thank you. Now, one of the things I do now is I spend purposefully. I used to, after I was able to, get out of college and make some money and not have $20 left at the end of the week. One of my objectives was to be able to pay all of my bills one day a month and not have to worry about, oh, this is due on the 15th, this is due on the 20th, and all of that. So I got to that about 10 years ago. So now I'm able to pay everybody by the 5th, and all the rest of the money I make is just mine. I just do whatever I want to do with that. So when I was at the bank several months ago, one of the ladies was trying to give me a cash rewards card. So she was, trying to sell me, and I was like, I don't want another credit card. She said, well, you'll get 3% back on gas. I said, really? I drive a Chevy Avalanche, so it holds 33 gallons of gas, so you'll understand why. 3% on that, $4 a gallon, yeah, that works pretty well for me. So there are things that I was purchasing that I could have been making money off of. Never even thought about it. So this is the actual statement that I have. The credit card that I have now, I think I took this maybe about a month ago. It's just for me making purchases on my credit card. I've accumulated $249 just for making those purchases. And I pay it off sometimes after about 2 weeks or sometimes after about 4 weeks, because it's the same money I would have used to buy the things that I was going to buy anyway. So I use that, and when I transfer it over to my checking account, they'll give me another 10%. So I'm waiting for the number to go up. So there is a way that you can make money by spending money. Now, I'm not going to tell you to get a credit card and pay for stuff and then not pay the credit card. So don't do that. If you're not going to do that, then don't get the credit card, because the 3% is not going to help you, because the interest rate is way higher than I think it's 1% on everything, 2% on groceries, and 3% on gas. I can't buy groceries on a credit card. That doesn't make any sense to me, but I can get the gas. The other thing I do is I save strategically. Now, I do two things with the savings, and there's a couple of reasons why you want to make sure you have money that's saved. You need about 6 months of business expenses saved. You need about 6 to 12 months of home expenses, just in case something happens to your job or your income. All of the deductibles for your insurance policies need to be in the bank. All insurance policies, homeowners, auto, any of your business policies. And also, you also need to be saving money for vacations. So one of the ways that I save money, I have two. So the first way is I have a keep the change account on my checking account. So every time I buy something, they transfer change. And I figure, well, this change isn't going to add up too quick. So I think that savings account has $600 in it now. That's just from change. So even when I pay bills and do different things like that, it transfers the difference over. And when I make purchases, well, that's when I buy my groceries, then it transfers money over. So over the last months, it has accumulated to $600. But the other thing that I do, and I saw somebody on TV doing this, and it was just an experiment for me, I started saving $1 bills. I was in Memphis with my mother for Mother's Day, and I was just following her around, and she was just constantly making me pay for stuff. That's what she does. So I kept breaking all these bills. And so I was like, well, I'm going to save these ones and see how much money I come up with. So that was in May. So the next year in August, I had $1,800, $1 bills. So every time I get ones, I just don't spend them. I put them in a drawer at home, and I just kept wrapping them until I think I was ready to go on vacation. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with them. So I went on vacation with that. And so I started over. So now I have 1,600, minus these. So it's a pretty quick way to accumulate money because it's very difficult to accumulate change. 3 and 4 and 5 cents doesn't add up pretty quickly, but if you break a 20 and you give them the change and they give you back $18, that's $3. And then you go and break the 10, they give you back 5 or 4, you got $4 more. Okay? So it's at least a way to save some money consistently, and not just count on change or just hope that nothing ever goes wrong. Because one of the difficulties that people have is when something happens, they are very reactive instead of proactive. So if you're reactive and you wait for bad things to happen, that's why you struggle. If you're proactive and you try to get things done and you try to anticipate what could possibly happen that I could be thinking about. And I guess that's one of the disadvantages for me because I don't have a safety net. I don't have anybody to take care of things and, be trying to figure out things for me. So I try to make sure that I'm always looking forward instead of just hoping nothing bad ever happens. Can I slice back, please? Now, this is a quote. I'm not sure if he said it, but this is what they told me. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Okay? So if you save your money and you're disciplined about it, you'll have money left over to do some of the things you want to do. But if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So here's the task list I'd like for you to think about. You eliminate your debts as soon as possible. One of the reasons most people don't have money is because they just owe out all the money that they have. But like the client I told you about, she doesn't have to have a lot of money because she doesn't owe anybody anything. And if you would eliminate your debts, you wouldn't have to struggle with your money. Stop living on borrowed money, credit cards, and loans. If you don't have enough and it's something you don't need, don't buy it. It's that simple. You will not die without a new whatever. I know. Create multiple streams of income for yourself so you can lower your stress. You might be able to get off your blood pressure pills. I had a doctor who was trying to put me on some. I quit my job. Blood pressure went all the way down. I'm very serious. I have all the pills that she gave me. I kept going back. She was like, you need to take these pills. I was like, no, I'm too young to take blood pressure pills. And she was like, oh, but your blood pressure's up. I said, I know what it is. It's those people. I got to leave. And I went my last day at my job, and the lady checked me, and she said, I said, you didn't say anything about my blood pressure. She said, well, it was 118 over 78. Beautiful. And I went home. Aspire to be financially literate every day. You need to learn how to understand your money. Otherwise, it's never going to work the way you want it to. And I hear a lot of people say to me, oh, well, I don't do numbers. I'm not an accountant. The most difficult stories that I hear are people who've made a ton of money and they let somebody else count it for them. And they took it. If you want to make money, you have to become a money person. You don't need to be an accountant. You don't need to do all the things we do, but you have to be strong in understanding where your money is and what you need to do with it. And if you really want to be in a different place than you are, then if you want something that you've never had, you're going to have to do something that you've never done. You can't just keep doing what you're doing over and over, expecting that something different is going to happen, because it's not. Can I have the slides back? Only be in business to make a profit, unless it's a nonprofit. But only be in business to make a profit. Don't be in business just to have something to do. If you're not making a profit, we need to find you, we can call it a hobby, and we can find you something else to do. Research and brainstorm business trends and ideas, and learn about customer needs, and find a profitable way to provide it. Now, for one of the clients that I have, I went to see them, and one of the first things I did was I asked, after we do an assessment for a client, we ask, what's your pain point? What problem can we solve today that's going to make a difference for you? So for this particular construction company, we were working on the business plan, but there were 3 people in this office and two estimators working in this office. So the estimator I was working with told me, he said, we have to go and ask the lady who's sitting right there at that computer, can she print for us every day? And I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of asking her to get up out of her chair because she don't want to do it. I was like, okay. He said, and if we could fax our bids quicker, then that would help too. I said, okay. So we went to lunch. We came back. I asked them if they had a wireless network, and they did, and I asked them for a cord. I hooked the printer into the computer, and I also downloaded the software for the printer into the laptop and into the desktop. And not only did I put the printer on the network, I set it up where they could fax from the other room. And then we imported the data for all of the contacts into the fax, where every time they got ready to do a bid, they could just hit one button, done. Now, to that customer, I'm valuable because I don't just know accounting. And I solved the biggest problem that they had. And one of the reasons that people don't get as many contracts as they think they should is because you're not solving somebody's problem. If you can solve problems for business owners, then you can get contracts. But you can't do exactly the same thing that everybody else is doing and think that they're just going to give you a contract just because you're in business. That's not why they do that. People either do business with people they like, or they do business with people who solve their problems. And most of the time, they like the people who solve their problems. Okay? Can I have slides back? Collaborate instead of just competing with people inside and outside of your industry. You can make money working with other businesses. One of the CPA that I used to work for in college, when we look at all the different businesses and all the different money that people can make, you know, we've had discussions about maybe we're doing the wrong business, instead of just counting money. But even when we go in on contracts with people, if you wanted to bid on $1 million contract, but your company couldn't do it because you didn't have the bonding or you didn't have the capacity, but you couldn't do it by yourself. If you went in with 3 other companies, so it's 4 of you, is 25% of $1 million contract better than 100% of 0? Right? Okay. So collaboration will work for you. Change the way you think about making and spending money. Don't just spend money for entertainment, and don't just make money to have something to spend. Okay? You got to think about saving. You got to think about the future. And then be yourself. You were born an original. Don't die a copy. Most people that I know spend all their lives trying to be like everybody else. Well, I want a business like that. I want to be like Bill Gates. I want to be like that person. You're unique, and you are supposed to be who you are right now. And the more you are yourself, the more you'll have what it is you're supposed to have in this life. Some questions? Yes, ma'am. I can hear you. Talk to me.
We have a couple of accountants that perform audits on our business annually. And what I wanted to know is whether, during the performance of an audit for FAR compliance or just to do your taxes, is that enough time for the accountant to catch embezzlement?
No. Are they auditing financial statements that somebody else is preparing?
Yes.
Who's preparing the
There will be
financial
a bookkeeper in the business preparing the books.
Okay, who's checking the bookkeeper?
That's the problem, apparently.
You have a couple of accountants doing audits.
Yes.
You need one to, check the financials of the bookkeeper, and you can use the other for the audit.
Okay, now
Okay.
is it monthly that this checking has to occur?
It depends on the bookkeeper. If the bookkeeper is high level and you have somebody else in your business who's also going to be, is there somebody else in the business looking at the financial statements and checking out the?
Yeah, but not to the level of figuring out whether we have a made-up vendor.
Right,
That's
because
just
I mean,
too
your
difficult.
bookkeeper could be making up the vendor, right? So, I think once you get somebody to check, you already have somebody auditing, right? And if they're auditing and they haven't seen anything yet, then I think 3 months might be okay. But if I was the business owner, I would be periodically checking to make sure. And then you probably need at least 2 signatures on checks, and that's just a safety precaution. If they're over, say, $500, I get 2 signatures. So at least if it's something, it won't be something significant. So I'd probably do that just to be sure. Yes, ma'am.
Is it working? Oh, okay. How much is bonding for a bookkeeper?
Bonding for
Yeah.
bookkeeper? Now, I'm not sure. I've never heard of anybody bond a bookkeeper.
Well, I'm just wondering, I have unfortunately seen a couple of people that have really lost quite a bit of money. And we do a lot of double and triple checking with our accounting ourselves, but I've often wondered if it would be less money ultimately to pay for a bond for the person that does our bookkeeping.
It would probably be less money if you paid for somebody who was probably a higher level than a bookkeeper.
We have that.
You do? Okay. Well, unless you have, well, and I'm not sure, you can check on bonding that particular person so you can insure against the loss. But if I was going to do it, I would probably get an accountant or a CPA or somebody else who would just kind of peruse everything. And, somebody who's not necessarily related to the business, but somebody who has a vested interest in making sure.
Independent.
Right, because I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time for us to just scan and see, what's going on. So
say, just a rule of thumb, a company that brings in about $1 million a year, how much time per month would you need to scan?
well, I mean, I can't really give you that because it just depends on how many checks you write, how many bank accounts you have, things like that. Maybe 2 or 3 hours, maybe, and that'll be a month just to look at it and see. But before that, I probably have to get familiar with your company, familiar with your vendors, kind of see what your history is and things like that. But you certainly want to make sure that you get somebody who already has some experience, because someone with some experience would be able to see things quicker than somebody who doesn't have very much.
And so does a CPA that has, I would call it forensic experience, what would you look for? What would be the nomenclature for that if you were?
What am I looking for?
Well, no, sorry. What is the name of the type of accountant or CPA that you would be looking for?
You don't necessarily need a forensic, no, because they'll probably
Right.
charge you way too much.
Right, what would that name?
Well, I mean, you can get anybody who's a CPA who's experienced in small business. I would look
Okay.
for somebody who's experienced in working with small businesses,
Okay.
but maybe have 10 years or more business experience.
Okay.
Because they would probably have a habit of looking for things that stand out.
Right.
Versus, somebody who might be new or somebody who's in another industry that if that's not what they do,
Right.
it's not going to be second nature to them.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Okay.
Do you set up businesses a lot as far as in setting up an LLC or incorporation, that type
Yes.
of thing?
Yes.
Is there any general, what's your general feeling of having LLCs versus corporations or these subchapter S corporations for someone generally starting in business, small,
Okay.
not gonna have any
No
more than about
income or
5
anything?
employees or less?
Okay. Well, if you already have 5 employees, then I don't particularly prefer, and I'm not sure what the laws are in Oklahoma, but I know in Tennessee, it's $350 to set up an LLC, and it's $100 to set up a corporation. And they're pretty much the same thing. Yeah, because you're gonna have to, if you want the protection, you're gonna have to incorporate anyway. And then it's $350 a year to maintain the LLC. And it's $20 a year to maintain the corporation. And you just have to have a board meeting. I think that's the biggest difference. But I think even with an LLC, you still have to have your board meeting. So there's not a lot of difference as far as what you're gonna have the responsibilities for the company. Depending on how the LLC is set up, if you don't elect to also be incorporated, then a one-person LLC, the IRS doesn't recognize LLCs. So they're just gonna see you as a sole proprietor. And if it's 2 of you, they'll make you a partnership. But because the IRS doesn't recognize them, most of the time when we look at them, we're looking at them from a tax perspective and, you know, the money that you're gonna have to pay. So when people ask me whether they should have an LLC or a corporation, I normally tell them to either get an S corporation or a straight corporation. I only recommend LLCs when they're purchasing land or property or things like that, or if it's a business that is just limited to maybe 5 years or 7 years or something like that, and you know it doesn't need to live any longer than that, then those are the only times I recommend LLCs for that.
Well, here it costs $100 to create an LLC, but $300 or more to create a corporation in this state versus
Is it $100 in this state to incorporate,
to create an LLC.
to create an LLC? How
yeah.
much is it to do a corporation?
Depending upon how much capital you authorize, it would be 300 or more.
It's more,
Yeah. So it's just a flip-flop here
right?
on that
Okay,
cost.
well, as far as the taxes are concerned, if you get an LLC, and like I said, if you're only a one person, then it's still gonna roll down to your tax return, to your personal tax return. So you'll end up having to pay self-employment taxes on the money that you earn. So it just really depends on if you want that money on your personal tax return or if you want it on a separate business
And
tax
both
return.
will provide the limited liability, though, in a sense, correct?
It's limited, the limited liability companies normally have one partner that's unlimited and then everybody else is limited. So if you really want to limit your liability, then my suggestion is to make sure you get liability insurance with the umbrella so you'd be covered. Because that's the only thing and unless you have just a straight corp, everything that the corporation purchases is inside of that corp because it's an artificial entity. And if somebody ever sues the company, it's just that company.
Oh.
Okay?
All right.
Got it.
Yeah. Would you recommend having multiple CPAs look over a business, or would you just strictly just use one CPA? You know, let's say we use one accountant to do our personal taxes. Would it make any difference if we'd use the same one for business purposes?
I probably would, just depending on the experience of the person. Because some people just do personal and some people just do business. Most people who do business do personal. So I think it just depends on the relationship that you have. As long as you have somebody that you're comfortable with, that you trust, and somebody who's giving you feedback, somebody who's not putting you off, somebody who actually returns your calls. I think for my clients, that's the most important thing, is that when they call, I answer the phone, and that when they have questions, I answer those questions. Instead of saying, well, I'm too busy, or billing you every time you call me, then. But if you have a person that you trust, then that's who I would stick with that person for whatever I need unless something happened. Okay? Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.